Welcome back to the Bears Talk podcast. We've been away for a little while, but we have some good reasons why. Number one, it was summer break. You guys and gals deserved a little bit of a break from the nonstop, repetitive talking points about the Chicago Bears when there wasn't really anything going on, anything newsworthy or noteworthy over the last couple of months. But that's all changing now that we have arrived at 2023 training camp. So, of course, we're kicking off a new season here on Bears Talk, and it starts today. It starts right now with a complete training camp preview, news, notes, storylines, updates, things you, the Chicago Bears fan, needs to be aware of as practice kicks off this week. Let's have some Bears Talk.
We're going to be an effort-based team.
Darnell being Darnell.
Love playing football.
Ready to open this thing up. Let them know that we're coming.
For Chicago Bears fans, I want to explain to you exactly what's been going on over at bearstalk.com over the last couple of months. We have some incredibly exciting developments that we have put together for the site that we think you are going to love. First, and the biggest development is our mock draft simulator. Yes, I know it's not draft season. Yes, I know training camp is only just beginning, but it's never too early to do a good old-fashioned mock draft, especially with the Chicago Bears having 2 first-round picks in the 2024 draft. So if you go over to bearstalk.com/NFL mock draft simulator, you will be able to control the Chicago Bears war room. You can be the GM. You can make the draft picks all 7 rounds. You can make trades into next year's draft 100% free. You don't have to be a Bears fan to use it, right? I mean, we don't discriminate. If you're a fan of another NFL team, you can enjoy the mock draft simulator as well. But obviously, it's geared toward you, the Bears fan. And we have another exciting development that we have over at Bears Talk. If you go to community.bearstalk.com, you can join the growing Bears Talk social network where you can be the expert. Look, I don't know about you guys and you gals and you Bears fans out there, but sometimes it can get really, really annoying, like beyond annoying to have beat writers, guys in Chicago think that they're the expert, that they know more than you about the Chicago Bears, that they need to tell you and force feed to you the narrative around this team. You guys, just like I, have been following this team your whole lives. You bleed navy and orange. This is your passion. So why not you be the expert about the Chicago Bears? Why not you publish the great clickable stories about this team? That's what the social network over at Bears Talk allows you to do. Again, it's 100% free. You go to community.bearstalk.com, create your free profile, and start creating content. Not only do you network with other Chicago Bears fans, but yes, you can create your own articles. You house them on your page, shareable on Twitter or whatever it's called now, x.com, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you want to start getting your name and your Chicago Bears opinion out there. You can do it now. Community.bearstalk.com. We did it for you, the Bears fan, to start spreading your passion for this team. You deserve your voice to be heard too, right? That's why Bears Talk. We're here to talk about this team and not be talked to about this team all the time. And I have developed such a passion in this space to give a voice to the Chicago Bears fan. I'm a Chicago Bears fan through and through. I've been fortunate enough to create content over the last several years through many different outlets at USA Today, at NBC Sports Chicago, and now my own brand that I've created. And I want to give back to you guys, the Bears fans, so you can get your start. So go to community.bearstalk.com. It's free. Start pushing your content out there today. Create your mock draft today. We'll feature a lot of that stuff here on Bears Talk. But before we waste any more time talking about those developments over on the website, let's start talking about 2023 training camp. Practice kicks off on July 26th. And, if you've been paying attention to Chicago Bears training camps over the years, I know obviously different coaching staffs have different approaches. They do things a little differently with each new regime. We got a little flavor of Matt Eberflus last year, obviously, with his intensity and the passion that he brings to the practice field. You practice like you play, the hustle, that whole hits philosophy makes training camp a really fun experience, not only for Bears fans, but even the players, right? Players don't want to go to training camp and not compete. Sure, the veterans, the guys who have been around for a long time, they just want to stay healthy. They don't want to deal with the heat. They've been there, they've done that. But this is a different team. This is a team of young players. There's not a lot of veteran influence yet on this roster. There's a lot of guys fighting for jobs, a lot of guys fighting for starting jobs, which could make this year's training camp a different level of intensity. Not only is there a lot of buzz around this team, a chance for this team to go from worst to challenging for first in the NFC North, but there's a lot of young, up-and-coming, ascending players battling for starting jobs and, let's be honest, battling just for roster spots over the next several weeks. And that's what makes training camp so fun, is when you don't have a completely settled depth chart. You don't have a bunch of grizzled veterans who have been around for several seasons filling the same role on the roster year after year, a predictable outcome in training camp. You have a whole slew of new guys, rookies, freshly signed guys in free agency, guys that were traded for, plus the guys that have been developing in the program. And we'll talk about Justin Fields in a minute, but they still have to prove that the team is making the right decision, basing the future around them. Guys like Justin Fields, a guy like Darnell Mooney, some of these young players on the roster like a Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon. These are guys that Ryan Poles, if he didn't directly bring them onto the roster, he has earmarked them as critical foundational players for this rebuild. So they still got to prove that they deserve that level of responsibility for this new era of Chicago Bears football. And that makes training camp so fun, because what we're going to find out pretty quickly, maybe not July 26th or 27th or 28th, it probably won't be till that first padded practice when the guys really start ratcheting up the intensity. We're going to see who the leaders are on this roster. We're going to see which players separate themselves from in some of these position battles, which we'll touch on in a minute as well. You're going to see these storylines come out. The players that are doing well in practice, the players that are struggling. Hopefully we avoid some serious injuries and get to that first preseason game with a lot of momentum. Because let's face it, there's a lot of momentum right now in Chicago, a lot of optimism. I put on Twitter the other day that I think this team has a chance to be an 11-win team. And when I tell you I got crushed in my mentions, now, unsurprisingly, a lot of the people who responded were Packers fans and Vikings fans and Lions fans. And believe it or not, there's like this new rivalry brewing, and it's not like an on-field rivalry. I think it's more like this weird thing that the Carolina Panthers have for Bears fans, maybe because they're a little nervous that they gave up a little too much for a quarterback who looks more like a kicker in an NFL uniform. But they're very sensitive on Twitter. They're very sensitive. It's like they have Bears content on Twitter, like the search term. They have it earmarked so that they can respond. And even Panther fans were in my mentions about 11 wins being an unreasonable or ridiculous pipe dream prediction. And maybe it is. Look, you're watching this video because you're a Chicago Bears fan. You got to start the season with optimism, and you got to think 11 wins. It's not in like the old school 11-5 when there's a 16-game schedule. 11-6, it's kind of like the new 10-6 season. The Chicago Bears right now, if they can get to 11 wins, which is not out of the question with this schedule, with this division that is in flux, the Bears have a chance to pull off a remarkable flip from a 3 or 4 win season a year ago to a 10-11 win season 1 year later. We've seen it before. So why not the Bears? And you know what? Inside Hallis Hall, the guys in that locker room, they believe. They believe that this is a possibility. And that momentum, that excitement that has been building throughout the offseason is now going to carry into training camp over the next few days. And we're going to see, is that excitement justified? Is that excitement a pipe dream? Is that excitement something that is really a truthful bubbling up of a new era of Chicago Bears football? Training camp really does start pointing you in that direction. It's like a compass that navigates you to the start of the season. And if you have a team that has a good, clean, injury-free, productive training camp, that usually translates into a pretty good season. So let's talk about what you should be looking for. What are the storylines that are going to come out of this training camp early on and that are important, the ones that matter, right? I'm not talking about the Dane Sazenbacher storylines of yesteryear, the Tanner Gentry wide receiver storylines, the guy that's making plays who at best might be a practice squad guy. I'm not talking about those storylines. I'm talking about the actual meaningful roster, impactful storylines that we as Bears fans have to pay attention to over the next few days. It starts with Justin Fields. Training camp starts, the middle, and it ends with Justin Fields. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who's going to look at every pass that Justin Fields throws and thinks, great pass, great season's coming. Poor pass, poor season's coming. Great decision, he's going to break out as one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Bad decision, interception, the Bears are doomed. You can't have an overreaction to anything that the Chicago Bears media puts out on social media, the great throw. You can't have overreactions to the Bears beat writers who love to be super negative anytime Justin Fields makes a bad decision. You can't overreact to any of it. But what you can do is kind of cast that fishing net out there and see what the slow developing, what's baking in the oven narrative around Fields is over a week to 2 weeks to the 3 weeks of training camp. Is it more positive? Is it more negative? Are there more highlights or are there more worrisome lowlights? You will be able to gauge the temperature of Justin Fields year 3 as we go through these practice sessions, as we get some reports of the inter-squad scrimmages that they're going to have down the line. When we get into the preseason and we see him actually maybe play a series or a quarter or two, we're going to get a better feel for what Justin Fields, the year 3 version, looks like based on these first couple of weeks of practices. But it's very, very, very important that you don't sit here and say, oh, Justin Fields the first day didn't have timing or chemistry with DJ Moore. Oh, Justin Fields was overthrowing Chase Claypool. This is a disaster. Burn it all down. He's not the guy. Caleb Williams watch. You can't do that. You have to monitor the Justin Fields storylines, monitor how the offense is performing over the first couple of weeks in practice. You want to see the offense win against the defense. You want to see Justin Fields consistently, daily, weekly, leading long, productive scoring drives in practice, productive 2-minute drill offenses, productive red zone sessions. You want to see that. If he's going to do it on the field on Sundays against opponents when the bullets are flying for real, he should be doing it on the practice field against guys he knows very well over many reps of how they play and the reads and looks that they're giving him. He's got to have a successful training camp going into year 3, but it's not like the stock market. You can't focus on Justin Fields throw for throw. You're going to drive yourself crazy. Every couple of days, you sit back, you grab a cup of coffee, you look around, you look at all the narrative, form your own narrative, judge for yourself. You have to trust the eyes on the ground at training camp, but you have to also trust your experience and the knowledge that you have as a football fan and what training camp, the evolution of training camp means for a player like a young quarterback. We saw this with Mitch Trubisky, right? If you use Mitch Trubisky as the template here, as the outline of how you should monitor a quarterback's productivity when they're at training camp entering a 3rd or 4th season, Mitch Trubisky never had like the dominant, obviously fantastic training camp. Matt Nagy once said that he went from like intro level to now teaching his offense, but that didn't show on the practice field. There were concerns about Trubisky all throughout his career in Chicago. He never looked like the man at training camp. We can't have that with Justin Fields this year. We have to have him take control of this offense. And if he does, that optimism is very real. As important as Justin Fields is to the offense, so is the wide receivers, or so are the wide receivers. DJ Moore, we know, uncontested wide receiver 1. Nobody's challenging him for that role, and the Bears are very fortunate to have him in that role. He is going to be a legitimate, big-time playmaker for this offense, something that we haven't seen in that capacity since a guy like Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, that level of playmaker for the Chicago Bears at wide receiver. But then from there are question marks. Not question marks like, is there any talent? It's more about who's going to be the wide receiver 2. Is it going to be Darnell Mooney? Is it going to be Chase Claypool? What kind of production is Tyler Scott going to have on a daily basis in training camp? He's a player that I think is a super dark horse to get meaningful reps right away as a rookie. He's a polished player who has juice and field flipping ability. Those guys find their way on the field. If he plays like a veteran in training camp, the guys in front of him can't just assume that he's going to be waiting for his time on the bench. You know, the Bears want to make plays right now, right away. Week 1, Green Bay Packers. There's no time to wait, right? Best players have to be on the field. Tyler Scott might be one of the top 3 receivers on this team by the time training camp winds down. Right before we hit the record button, we got good news on Chase Claypool, who a couple of days ago on the PUP list. And it was like, oh boy, here we go. Chase Claypool is going to continue this narrative of Ryan Poles making a terrible decision, trading what was the 32nd overall pick for Claypool. And now he's on the PUP list, losing time with Justin Fields. This is a disaster. It's already over before it started. Well, fortunately, it was probably just a physical issue, maybe a conditioning issue. Maybe he didn't even check in time to take his physical. Chase Claypool was activated right before we hit record from the PUP list. He's not going to miss a single rep in practice, assuming that the injury is not going to keep him on a day, off a day, on a day, off a day. The Bears will decide how they handle his load management, but he's out there. He's going to be competing. I personally think you're going to see Darnell Mooney initially begin ahead of Chase Claypool on the wide receiver pecking order, but does it really matter, right? I mean, they're two totally different kinds of players. Chase Claypool's the big body downfield mismatch. Darnell Mooney is more of a slippery, silky, smooth route runner who can go intermediate and deep. They're complementary players. So DJ Moore is wide receiver 1, and then you kind of have 2A and 2B with Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool if everything goes right. And then you have Tyler Scott as the wide receiver, quote unquote, 4. But it's really going to be exciting to see how these guys build their chemistry with Justin Fields, how it all unfolds over the first couple of weeks of training camp. Because if, like I said, if Fields is missing these guys, if they're running the wrong routes, if it doesn't look like they're connecting the way Bears fans and Luke Getsy is expecting, it's going to turn positive, is going to turn negative real quick. So keep an eye on that early in training camp. What do these wide receivers look like? Are they coming together and meeting the expectations that Bears fans, Bears media, NFL media has created ever since that DJ Moore trade? One of the best competitions for Bears fans to monitor at training camp over the next couple of weeks is at running back. And it's funny because it's not like there's any elite running back in the mix. It's 3 good players. Khalil Herbert, good player. Deonta Foreman, good player. Roschon Johnson, everybody loves Roschon. 4th round pick out of Texas. We don't know if he's a good player. We don't know if he's a bad player. He's a rookie. We've never seen him take a rep on an NFL field yet. All signs point toward him being a pretty darn good guy and high-level work ethic and has all the traits to be a great pro. Just, he's just got to do it on the field. But those 3 guys are going to be competing every single day in a reps chart. The Bears aren't calling it a depth chart, running back 1, running back 2, running back 3. So keep track of who's getting the reps. Khalil Herbert should be the presumptive RB1 at the start of training camp because he did a great job last year. 5.7 yards per carry in the NFL. That's no joke. Like you don't fall into 5.7 yards per carry. 5.7 yards per carry only happen if you have good vision, good patience, good power, good explosive ability. Khalil Herbert has all of that. He just doesn't have the pass blocking chops yet to think that he could be a full-time player. Deonta Foreman outproduced David Montgomery, who everybody has viewed as a big loss for the Chicago Bears. And of course, locker room culture guy, he is a big loss. But Deonta Foreman was actually a better running back than David Montgomery last year. He's also kind of weak in the pass blocking department. And then Roschon Johnson would have started for probably almost every other major college football program that did not have Bijan Robinson on its roster. But he was on the one program that did have Bijan Robinson on the roster. So he's never really been a full-time guy, but he is a high-level pass protector, physical downhill runner, and he can be a special teams ace. But it doesn't matter, right? It's going to be who does the best in training camp, who looks great, who meshes the best with Justin Fields, who is not screwing up their assignments. I really think this is going to come down to who do the Bears trust the most And that's going to be the guy who's in the game, because from a talent standpoint, all three of these guys are going to get 4 yards a carry or more. They're going to be able to catch passes out of the backfield. Who do they trust the most not to get the quarterback killed? The Bears will probably be able to figure that out just through training camp. Like if you've gone to a Senior Bowl practice, you see running backs in these one-on-ones and pass blocking drills. They do it in NFL training camps. That's going to be as fundamental as it is, as silly as it might sound. That could ultimately be the reps that decide who wins the running back contest. Production in a preseason game is great. Picking up a blitzer in the preseason game will be extra bonus. But the guy who proves every week, every day in practice to be fundamentally sound, both in his assignment, knowing where he has, who's his guy, who's he picking up in a pass blocking situation, and functional ability to actually accomplish the responsibility of blocking that guy, that's who's going to start at running back. At least that's who's going to get the most reps, the most important reps. Khalil Herbert may be a ceremonial starter, the guy in the first possession, the first carry, first 2 or 3 plays. But as the score gets a little bit lopsided, or if the Bears are playing catch up, or if there's a situation where more pass blocking is required, if Khalil Herbert doesn't prove that he improved on that part of his game, he's not going to be in the game. But we're going to see over training camp, over the next couple of weeks, which one of these guys do the Bears trust the most? I can't wait to see it play out, because running back, I'm an old school guy. You guys, if you're a regular Bears talker, you know I'm an old school guy. Running back to me is a fundamental position in the sport. Yes, there's all this drama about paying running backs and the market valuation of running backs. For me, you really have to have a good running back to have an offense that can challenge defenses, make defenses think, especially when you have a quarterback like Justin Fields who can run the RPOs. Having a running back who's just as dangerous makes that defensive lineman, that linebacker, that safety, give that extra half-second hesitation. And that's the difference between a 2-yard play and a 72-yard touchdown. So to me, running back matters. It's going to be really important and fun to see which one of these guys ends up being the winner of the running back derby. What also matters is that you guys hit the like and subscribe button on this video. Help spread the word about Bears Talk. We want to become the go-to Bears Talk YouTube channel and podcast, however you're listening to this. If you're driving to work, if you're watching on your phone, whatever you're doing, we want to be your favorite Bears, Chicago Bears podcast and content that you consume. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure you share it on Twitter, on Facebook. We need you. And hopefully you need us. It's going to be a joint effort to make the 2023 season a really, really fun one. And for it to be really, really fun, the Bears have to have a really, really productive training camp. And we talked about some of the issues on offense that we're going to be watching: Justin Fields, the wide receivers, the running backs, and of course, the offensive line, right? Is Cody Whitehair really the answer at center? Will Lucas Patrick challenge him at some point over the next couple of weeks? You know, it's a war of attrition for these big guys. If Cody Whitehair pulls a hamstring, if Cody Whitehair tweaks a knee, and Lucas Patrick gets in there and looks like the guy the Bears signed a year ago to be the starting center, and he actually looks better than Cody Whitehair, we could be talking about a completely different starting five in terms of that pivot. You got the left tackle, Braxton Jones, the right tackle, Darnell Wright, the left guard's Tevin Jenkins, the right guard is Nate Davis, and we're just assuming that Whitehair will be the center. But that's a big assumption right now. I think he's the favorite. He's the clubhouse favorite, of course. Lucas Patrick, remember, he was here last year in training camp to be the starting center, and his hand injury was the big injury the Bears suffered in training camp. He's been forgotten about since then. And maybe Whitehair is a better player, and maybe Whitehair is the better option, but don't rule that out as a position battle to watch. And of course, watching Darnell Wright, the rookie first-round pick. First-round picks are always exciting to watch. When it's an offensive lineman, it's maybe a little boring, right? Because it's not a guy that you're going to see stats. They're not in the box score. They're not sacking the quarterback. They're not registering an interception or rushing for yards or catching passes. But we'll know pretty quickly if Darnell Wright is struggling. I think that's really the only time the first-round offensive lineman gets noticed, is when they're screwing up, right? If they're whiffing a blitzing defensive end who destroys the quarterback in the backfield, the red flag, the meter goes up on the offensive lineman. Hopefully, we won't be noticing any Darnell Wright this preseason, because if we don't notice Darnell Wright, that means he's doing his job correctly, and that he's not a liability. And I think that's all Bears fans want right now is a pair of tackles who are not liabilities for Justin Fields. But offense is only half the equation. Actually, it's only a third of the equation for the purists. We got to talk about some defenders as well. Obviously, the big issue on the Bears defense right now is the pass rush. Where's it coming from? Travis Gibson. I mean, he's had a chance to break out now. He didn't do it last year. Is he the guy that's going to do it this year? I mean, we'll see. We don't really know if Travis Gibson is going to ever be an 8, 9, 10 sack guy. He didn't look capable of it last year. Dominique Robinson was the man who exploded in week 1 of last year with 1.5 sacks against the 49ers, and then he didn't have another sack rest of the year. So I think he's just too raw. He jumped out of the gate with an amazing start to his rookie season, and it created unfair expectations. So I think we've leveled down, and we know exactly now what Dominique Robinson is on that 3-year learning curve before we can expect him to break out. They signed Rasheem Green. DeMarcus Walker was a pretty big free agent signing as a defensive lineman, inside-outside guy. Is he going to be the pass rusher? Are the Bears really going to rely on interior pass rush? Justin Jones was okay. They got Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens in the draft. Where is the pass rush coming from? Maybe by the time you're watching or listening to this episode of Bears Talk, the Bears have signed or traded for one. I mean, the Chase Young rumors on Twitter are all over the place. Yannick Ngakoue is still unsigned. There's a lot of these different theories and hypothetical scenarios floating around there with some insiders, whether real or fake, who are suggesting that the Bears are, in conversations with some of these veterans, in consideration for some of these trades. We'll see what's real, what's fake, but I don't think the Bears' current stable of pass rushers will be the stable of pass rushers that we see on opening night. We'll see what happens over the next couple of days, but it doesn't seem like this defense can rely on guys like Travis Gibson and Dominique Robinson to be two critically important edge rushers. That would be almost football malpractice by Ryan Poles. You really can't do that, especially with such a young secondary, which is another part of the defense that is an extremely exciting position group to monitor during training camp. You have a second-round rookie in Tyreek Stevenson coming into the fold 1 year after a second-round rookie in Kyler Gordon and a second-round rookie in Jaquan Brisker. And they're already complimenting guys like Eddie Jackson, one of the best safeties in the league, and Jalen Johnson, one of the top young cornerbacks in the NFC. This secondary could quickly become the strongest position group on the roster. And we'll see in training camp, right? So if we go back to what we talked about in the beginning, where it's Justin Fields and the wide receivers and how are they doing? Well, they're going to go up against what might be the best naturally talented group of players on the roster, the secondary. So if they're dominating guys like Tyreek Stevenson and Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker, it's not necessarily because the secondary is bad. It might just be because the Bears have some pretty damn good offensive weapons now. But if they're struggling against those guys, like I feel like offense should be, it starts off behind the defense when training camp kicks off. And then by the time training camp is over, it should be dominating the defense, just dominating them. If they're not able to kind of jump that threshold by mid-training camp or later, you're going to see a tale of two narratives come from this. You're going to have one cluster of Bears fans and Bears writers saying, well, it's because the defensive backfield is just so good. And you're going to have another cluster of Bears fans and Bears writers saying, Bears offense is atrocious. Justin Fields is terrible. The wide receivers are terrible. So buckle up, right? You're going to see two distinctly different position groups. It's going to be the irresistible force against the immovable object, or whatever the heck that saying is. One of them is going to look good. One of them is not. But they both have a chance to be extremely, extremely talented and productive parts of this team. DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon, Jalen Johnson. I mean, that's 6 of probably the most gifted the most gifted football players on the roster. And they're going to go head to head every day. That is, get your popcorn ready stuff. Can't wait to see it. I don't think there's that many position battles up for grabs in the secondary. The starting 5, if you count that nickel corner, it's set. Nobody's challenging those guys. So they have a chance to really gel and mesh and have their highlight moments in training camp. Look, Justin Fields won't be perfect. And I hope he's not perfect because one of these guys is just so good. They're making plays. Maybe every couple of days, Justin Fields thinks he's got a guy open and boom, Tyreek Stevenson breaks on a ball and just flashes that football intelligence and athleticism that made him a second-round pick. Because if he can do it against Justin Fields, he'll do it against Jordan Love, right? That's what you want to see. So the cornerback group is going to be an interesting one. And so is the defensive line. Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens. These are two very important draft picks. Gervon Dexter has a chance to be like a massive, disruptive force in the interior of the Bears defensive line. He is going to test the old adage of a more productive pro than college player. All we've been told since the draft is that Gervon Dexter didn't look explosive because of the way he was coached in college, his assignments at Florida to not be a penetrator, and that we will see that with the Bears. We're going to know really quick in training camp. If Gervon Dexter is this unblockable penetrating force, Bears might have gotten a first-round talent in the second round. If Gervon Dexter is kind of anonymous each practice, looks a little sluggish, a little slow off the snap, a little delayed to react, maybe the hyperbole after the draft was nothing more than just exaggerated post-draft honeymoon euphoria. We'll see soon with Gervon Dexter. And Zach Pickens is a guy who kind of, I don't know, he hasn't really been talked about enough, in my opinion. I think he could be a player who's one of the training camp standouts. He could be one of these guys who actually outplays some of the guys who are in front of him. He's a former 5-star guy. He's a little quicker, has a little bit more of the juice off the snap that I like to see from the interior defensive lineman. He might actually be a better pro than Gervon Dexter. And we'll see soon in training camp, right? If he's giving Tevin Jenkins and Nate Davis and Cody Whitehair and these interior offensive linemen, if he's giving them fits, you can count on Zach Pickens to be a pretty damn good pro. It'll translate from the practice field to that first preseason game and beyond. So, look, training camp is just getting started. We are going to have a blast covering all the news and information coming out of Chicago Bears practices. We're going to have it all on bearstalk.com. Every single day, you got to go to bearstalk.com. We will have everything covered, whether it's video highlights, reports from boots on the ground, press conferences, you name it. We're going to have it covered on bearstalk.com. We are going to be posting a lot more episodes here on the Bears Talk podcast every single week. So you have to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications, share this with your friends and your family and all your fellow Bears fans, because we are going to have Bears content covered here. We're going to have writers from all over the NFL media universe joining us in upcoming episodes. Chicago Bears writers, rival team writers. We're going to have it covered all throughout training camp and into the regular season. So make sure you have it locked in here on Bears Talk, locked in on bearstalk.com, and of course, keep bearing down.